All right, welcome back in to the pump fake. We'll shift gears now from Indianapolis and we'll go to Cincinnati, where it was reported that the Cincinnati Bengals are now fielding trade offers for star edge rusher 2024 sack leader Trey Hendrickson. And, this is something that's been going on now all offseason, really dating back to last year when Trey made it known that he wanted a new deal. Things didn't get done there. It really boiled down to long-term guaranteed money, which he does not have right now. But he's made it very clear this offseason that he's not going to play on the final year of his deal unless there's an extension with more guaranteed money. And he seems to be staying true to his word, has been holding in at training camp, was on the sideline last night for the team's Monday night game against Washington. But things still remain at an impasse between Hendrickson and the Bengals front office. Back in July, Mike Brown said that they weren't going to be trading Trey. But, as time goes on, we're sitting here almost a month later, a deal still isn't done. And from a Bengals perspective, to play devil's advocate real quick, I've been critical of them, but I can't remember who it was who said this, so I apologize if you're watching this. But somebody had pointed out, Trey Hendrickson led the NFL in sacks last year and is an incredible player, and it still meant next to nothing for the Bengals defense because they were still incredibly bad. And so if you are the Bengals, would you look at last year and say, let's pay Trey, because he made our defense that much better? That's not to say that Trey isn't a great player. He obviously is. But is he making the Bengals defense, turning them from the 28th ranked defense until the 12th ranked defense? He did it. And again, not taking anything away from Trey. He deserves to get paid. And I hope he does get paid. And I think he will. I think Cincinnati will eventually come to terms here and give him the money that he wants. And look, if they don't, they'll trade him somewhere who does. He's an incredible player. But Trey Hendrickson can't do it on his own. When you're the only impact guy on a defense, there's only so much you can do. Trey Hendrickson can't stuff the run up the middle because he doesn't play defensive tackle. Trey Hendrickson can't prevent, deep over-the-top completions because he doesn't play corner. And so from that perspective, I can understand if that's how the Bengals are looking at it. But there are teams who would certainly line up to acquire Trey Hendrickson. The one that people seem to be pointing out a lot is Detroit. Obviously, with Aiden Hutchinson coming back from the season-ending leg injury he suffered last year. If you put Trey Hendrickson on the other side of him, that's arguably, at least on paper, the best pass rushing duo in the NFL. Teams like Green Bay, who've been also in the Micah Parsons conversation, apparently, as that continues to be its own enigma. But teams like that who are on the brink or who are already good teams and really looking to solidify themselves as top-tier Super Bowl contending teams. And the one that I'm going to come back to that I've been harping on all offseason is the Buffalo Bills. And I know a lot of people who followed me for a long time are just going to be like, man, you really want Josh to get a Super Bowl? Yeah, of course I do. But it also makes sense for Buffalo to do it for a couple reasons. A, the Bengals are reportedly asking for a high draft pick and a player. And of course, when all of these things initially come out with the compensation wishes of the team with the player that they're looking to trade, usually they don't get anything close to that. But in the case of the Bills, they are the one team, and maybe the Rams, but they're, in a very small group of teams who can look at draft picks and say, okay, we don't really need them. And, some of you might be saying, well, why would they do that? Well, A, they just, led the NFL in total points from regular season and postseason with Josh Allen, James Cook, and a whole lot of just dudes. Defensively is where they struggle. And if you're saying, well, why don't they just, draft some help? Let's take a look at what Buffalo's done in the draft over the last 5 years. So last year, they draft wide receiver Keon Coleman with their top pick. He had 29 catches as a rookie. That's just simply not going to do it. The year prior, they draft Dalton Kincaid, who only had 44 catches last year. In 2022, they draft Kyer Elam, who has since been traded to the Dallas Cowboys because his display, his performance in the AFC Championship game was so awful that they got rid of him. 2021, they draft Greg Rousseau, who's never had 10 sacks in a season. 2020, they draft AJ Epinesa, who's never had 10 sacks in a season. So from that perspective, if you're the Buffalo Bills, why are you holding on to draft capital when clearly at the top of the draft, you're not very good at drafting high-end talent? And every year that you don't win a Super Bowl with Josh Allen is another year of his prime wasted. So if I'm Buffalo, I'll call up Cincinnati and say, look, you want a first-round pick? We'll give it to you. You want AJ Epinesa too? We'll give him to you. And it's also reported it doesn't necessarily have to be a pass rusher that goes back to Cincinnati. And so if I'm Brandon Beane, I will call Duke Tobin and Mike Brown, and I will say, I'll give you a first-round pick, and I'll give you any defensive player not named Christian Benford or Terrell Bernard. Take your pick. Because the Bills have gotten too damn close for too damn long, and the one issue they've had when facing the Kansas City Chiefs is they can't get to Patrick Mahomes. And if you can't get to Patrick Mahomes, you're probably going to lose. Defensively, that unit has let down Buffalo in the Josh Allen era. In the 4 playoff games they've played against Kansas City, the offense has put up over 28 points a game, and they've lost all of them. They were the only team to allow the Chiefs to score 30 points last year. So the Buffalo Bills, if you really want to go all in and put an exclamation point on what you've done this offseason with paying all your guys, go out and get Trey Hendrickson and give yourself a pass rushing trio of Hendrickson, Joey Bosa, Greg Rousseau. And while Greg Rousseau hasn't had 10 sacks in a season yet, he has been one of the leaders in havoc plays. So I'm not trying to dismiss Greg Rousseau. They just paid him this past offseason for the work that he's done. He's a fine player. But if you can give yourself a trio like that, then you put yourself at the top of the conversation of, all right, if not now, when?